What it is, y'all. It is your old boy Pilg, and let's have a quick discussion about Danmachi episode 3. I always say it's quick, but we always go into like insane amounts of detail on the episode. And before I go into the review, this week I want to discuss something that I think is kind of interesting about this episode. Now, we did talk in season 2 a few times about episodes that, maybe lacked in the animation department. And thus far in season 3, I've really noticed that problem. But I want to say after about Act 1, maybe up to like all the way at the end of, Act 4, there were a lot of moments where units were just off model. Especially the confrontation between Bell and Lead. Those two were just not well done, honestly. And for an anime that, obviously, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Japan was shut down for a long time for COVID. They were a big epicenter, and these animation studios are generally densely packed places. People are overworked, underpaid. We got to give them the benefit of the doubt. But they've had 6 months over and above, roughly, give or take, when this was initially supposed to be aired. So I felt like this episode, for what it represented to this part of the series, deserved way more love. Because obviously, as you can see, the opening part of the episode, where we see Daedalus' eye, and he's just kind of in the cave, like, digging away and just losing his mind. Beautifully animated. Absolutely gorgeous. And that set up the episode to be really something grandiose and awesome and really representative of what the anime thus far has been. I mean, just very beautiful, very well drawn. But then we kind of get to the scene where the Xenos are interacting with the people in the village that they've obviously captured. I even think the one dude died, like straight up croaked there on camera. And they're interrogating these people, and they're kind of looking weird, but also you want to, say the Xenos obviously beating them up pretty good, and they're currently interrogating him. That's not good on the body. That usually shows a little wear and tear, but even some of the animation quality was starting to waver a little bit. A lot of symmetry seemed to be lost off the faces and the lines. But, they've also been poisoned, and, it's a boiling poison acid in their faces. So I was willing to make a lot of that, a lot of concessions for that. But then you start to see some of the other character models, like even Shakti to a lesser extent, and some of the Xenos that we've seen before really started to look off model. Of course, we have the scene where the Ganesha Familia is obviously down there in the dungeon and finally at level 18 and is confronting some of these Xenos. And even some of their armors and things like that just really looked... If you ever look at some of these armors up close and personal, when they're supposed to have like spikes and things like that, they just have like vague circles. And maybe I'm just analyzing this too much, but I really felt like this episode, for what it represented, kind of, being a big climactic, not even climactic point, but just a big confrontational point in this episode, really deserved more love, And also, now, obviously I know that we have to kind of take for granted they can't fit everything in from the light novels, but I don't recollect them ever giving us any kind of segue to how Asfi met up with Ryu and Aisha. And Aisha seems to know even more now about Ryu's past. There's like this whole conversation about Evilus and all that stuff. So it seems like every episode, I'm like one episode behind in the light novel. So I kind of am enjoying a lot of the mystery of watching the anime and then catching up in the light novels. And I know we haven't done the deep dives I keep threatening to do, just personal time and life and stuff getting in the way. But I really felt strongly like there was something missing there. Unless I just didn't remember it from the last episode. I don't think they covered it at all. It just seemed really abnormal. And even Asfi kind of had, the mask that makes him look invisible. She had that from episode 1, but then suddenly like Ryu and Aisha have those. Not that I'd think Ryu probably doesn't have the ability to acquire those things. Hell, she found the key that they use later on to open up that man-made labyrinth. But it just, there's a lot of things that don't make sense. Like, they're just not connecting the dots to these really pivotal moments that I think are really important from a narrative standpoint. Now, once again, as I am critical of the episode, I did enjoy the overall feel of the episode. Obviously, the interaction between when Lead and Belle are having their little, I guess, confrontation in the woods. They kind of run off, and there's no really hard feelings between the two of them, but obviously Lead, at some point, has had a change of heart. And I feel like, once again, we kind of expected that Gross was going to have a big hand in the attack on the village, but I didn't think Lead and his crew were going to be part of that. And we see, Lead is in there, Ray is in there. A lot of people asked, what was up with Ray? Wasn't she the one killed in the last episode? No, that was a different siren. There are modeling differences between the two of them. If you really go back and analyze it, you can see a lot of the differences. But I think they kind of didn't divulge too much on that to kind of play with your emotions a little more. Just, like the big mystery, is that Ray? Holy crap, how did that happen? So I really feel like that was an interesting artistic choice for the anime to take last episode. But yes, no, Ray is with Lead, and they've kind of had this change of heart. Like, they're obviously partaking. Now, it doesn't seem like Lead is necessarily partaking in the interrogation and all that, but he definitely at some point has just been coerced and is now following Gross's, I won't say command, but definitely following his leadership. And there was something missing. It just feels like a big character shift. So as I'm sitting here really analyzing this, I really can't wait to go back in the light novel and read that portion of the story. If you guys want to catch up, I believe this is the beginning of book 10. I could be wrong on that one, but I'm at the end of book 9 right now, and they haven't gotten to any of this. So I believe this is the very beginning of book 10. So if you want to catch up, it's a great time. The light novels are absolutely astounding. They're very well written, and they're going to connect a lot of these dots that we're missing. But I digress. I don't want to get too much into that. I want to talk more about the episode. Now, I do want to say that a lot of the interaction between characters here was very good, very well written, even though we are missing some of those key, connecting points. The characters themselves were, because once again, you have to remember you're taking this from different media. Whoever storyboarded this did a really fantastic job. Whoever did the conversion to the screenplay, or the screenwrite, technically, did a very, very, very good job. All the characters felt, nothing felt forced. This all felt like really wonderful interactions. And there's a lot of tension here, You've got Belle, who is technically with the Ganesha Familia at this juncture, and is, he's more on a fact-finding mission. Obviously, Lead is kind of in that same realm, but obviously he's on more of an offensive type of situation. Obviously not to the same extent as Gross. Gross straight up is interrogating the dude, and the dude was like, go to the eastern corner, and doesn't really tell him much beyond that. But we know later on from the interaction with the Eclos Familia that they're basically like, open the doors, let him in. And that's exactly what happens. But everything just kind of one leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. Ryu has a random interaction with Belle and Lead, technically, in the woods. Lead runs off. Belle basically is given the eye that they use as a key, runs after Lead, and then meets up with Fells. Now, Fells is a really, really, really interesting character here. Obviously, she's trying to play referee between, the two, without intervening with, obviously, the Ganesha Familia, who's, I won't say on the attack, but definitely playing a very defensive role, trying to tame the monsters. And, kind of appealing to the more rational Xenos that are. And I say the monsters because that's what just they don't really know they're Xenos. They kind of do and they kind of don't. I'm not sure that everybody in the party is really familiar with the concept of this. Even though Shakti knows, but there's obviously very rational people or entities within each group, and that's who Fells is trying to interact with and trying to rationalize with. Because obviously, when you have people that are acting irrationally, you cannot, just from a psychological standpoint, you're not going to be able to make an irrational person suddenly rational. It's just not the way it works. You have to find the rational people and slowly convert them. And as those irrational people begin to lose their hand on things, they are going to slowly just, be more or less, not realigned, but definitely kind of redacted in a way. So a lot of this, Fell's character is really, really, really interesting. So this basically leads us to a scene where, now obviously Aisha's in the middle of the battle. I think Aisha's there for her own purposes. She seems a little more sadistic in this one. Ryu's trying to basically realign Bell. Bell's trying to realign Lee. Lee's trying to realign Gross. Blah, 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 blah. It's all just a really fun interaction. And eventually, and the really interesting part is they begin to understand, you get kind of in the midst of all this, kind of a shot from the Hestia Familia, who's now trying to understand what's going on. And Lily obviously is in an interaction with someone before who was trading in monsters. And she was like, I didn't believe it was a thing. I didn't think that was a thing at all. I didn't believe him. I didn't want to, have anything to do with it. But then they begin to go to this guy who's obviously in prison. And they find out that, yes, this is a thing. And there's, the whole Hestia Familia is now kind of like, oh, man. It's like that light bulb moment. Like, this is bigger and deeper than we ever thought. And obviously about that time is when we get to the big interaction between the Eclos Familia and the Xenos. Obviously, the Xenos are more or less coerced into what we come to find out is basically a man-made dungeon. There's this whole backstory of Dix and his lineage, and they're all cursed with this eye, and they're able to access this hidden dungeon that's just literally a man-made dungeon where they're able to capture and basically more or less hide from the guild. So if you've watched the episode, you already know that this dude here, I forget his name now, I even mentioned it before, but he is basically the architect of Babel. He basically created Babel. And at the end of his life, he started to lose his mind and started digging a man-made dungeon, which we find out later is connected to level 18. And they're like, we've had to complete this. We've had, this is selling monsters at first became a way to fund continuing this legacy. And obviously they allude to the fact they're trying to get deeper and deeper and deeper into the dungeon. And obviously selling monsters is now just kind of less of a means to an end, more of literally the digging the dungeon has become the means to the end. Selling the monsters has become a very lucrative business. As you can kind of imagine, we live in a world where there are just straight unsavory people. Joe Exotic, basically, for example. God, I don't even want to get into that comparison. But, I mean, it's an easy comparison to make. Let's be real. But, yeah, so obviously we get into this big interaction where the Xenos are now in there. They're fighting the Eclos Familia. And this is where it gets really cool. Instead of fighting them, more or less, Dix just unleashes a curse. And bam. Now the Xenos, a lot of them have reverted to monsters, and Fells is stay behind this line. And obviously the curse, I guess, has a range on it where some are affected, some aren't, and now they're just battling each other. So this is just not going to end well. And the Eclos Familia is now hands off. They're just well, cool. They've got little to nothing that they need to do. They're just waiting. It's a waiting game now. And I love it because Bella's this is another one of those moments where Bella's no, I'm going to man up. I am absolutely, we're going to take this on. This is going to be a thing. And Dix is just like, you really want to do this? You really want to go? I'm a level 5. You can bring it. But you and I both know how this is going to end. And I love that interaction. Because Belle's just like, man up, screw it, I'm going. And it really sucks too for him because Haruhime is not there to like give him a level up. But yeah, I mean we know how it's inevitably going to end. Though it's interesting because at the end of all of this, the end of the episode, we see, I can't remember her name, but the rabbit from the previous episode. And then we see a very, very familiar face from the opening. So I want to end this with a little bit of speculation. And once again, those of you that have read the light novels, don't spoil it. I'm going to go read the light novels. I'm literally, after this ends, I'm going to make our video for Memoria Freeze regarding the new polls. And then I'm going to be basically nose deep in the light novels for the rest of the day because I want to know. But this looks like a very familiar person. Someone we've seen all the way back in about the middle of Series 1. And they do mention that as these monsters die, they tend to, the more experiences they have, the more of the cognizance they retain. And it's not out of the question to believe that someone that was trained by Otaro... I've said too much. I really hope that's the case. How awesome would that be? Speculate in the comment section down below, but no spoilers, guys. No spoilers. Let's have the conversation and really begin to kind of see if we can unwrap. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe it's just a huge coincidence that's going to lead somewhere else. But, man, I would just be mind blow. So let's see what happens, guys. That's my review. Let me know what you guys thought of the episode. Once again, it was a really enjoyable episode. Easily, if I was going to give it a score out of 10, 7.5. Just because the character interactions and all this and everything it's leading up to was absolutely fantastic. But man, the art wasn't the art was a 4 out of 10. It really hurts the score, but everything else about this episode was really, really, really good. I'd even go, I mean, maybe now let's say a 6, because there were some dots that we didn't get connected, and it's kind of leading you back. Like, you've almost got to read the light novel to know how these different little tiny things added up. But I think they're very important things. So, I'm going to go read book 10. I'm going to go find out. I'm going to go on my own fact-finding mission. I'm not going to spoil it for y'all, but I think we're going to get our answer in episode 7. So I am stupid hyped for that. If you're hyped too, hashtag EP7 hype in the chat right now. I just want to see how many people made it this far in the video. For now, I'm going to go read the light novels. I'll catch you all on the next one.